Good morning. Well, how can I go wrong after an introduction like that? Yes, I want to talk about how we can utilize ancient sacred sites and some of the mysteries they contain in our modern world today. As Maria said yesterday morning, if you were here, she gave a great presentation, and one of the things she said was, what's the point of studying these sites if we can't apply the knowledge today, if it isn't useful to us today? Otherwise, it's just academic. So that's what I want to do, look at how the knowledge from our ancestors is very, very useful to us today. In fact, I would say is actually our salvation. Everything affects us. We hear music all the time. We're also bombarded by TV waves, radio waves, mobile phone waves. And everything is affecting us. Being in this room is affecting you compared to being out in nature, which affects you. So I just wanted to make the point that we are energy and we are affected. All that was happening there was sound vibrations were coming to you. That's all that was happening, but it made you feel different. So let's look at some other vibrations that can make us feel different. This is particularly for those people who maybe have ADD, don't have a lot of sort of patience. If you don't want to sit through this entire talk, you can just read this and then you can go out and have a cup of coffee. I'm saving you time here. The points I'm going to be making are the world is energy manifest. Pay attention to what you don't see. Off to one side, you'll actually have to wait and listen to that if you want to know what that's about. So it'll off to one side. Sacred geometry creates spiritual space. The balance of complementary opposites. Water underlies all power places. Intention is the key. And magic happens. But the fine point, we have to act. So that's a summary of what I'm going to talk about. And here we are on our beautiful planet. And the Earth is a huge generator of electromagnetism. It has a huge iron crystalline core. That's the latest scientific belief. It's spinning at 1100 miles an hour. The Earth's gravitational field acts in the same way as a ring of magnets in a generator. And so the Earth creates electromagnetism. And this is showing the Earth with this large iron crystalline mass, 1,500 miles across. That's the size of the iron crystal in the center of the Earth. This is latest scientific belief. It's not molten magma anymore. Molten magma surrounds that iron crystalline core, and then we have the Earth's crust for 70 miles on the outside. And I normally refer to it, it's like a squidgy peach. And it's spinning and it generates electromagnetism. This is a little sort of a diagram of what I think is happening in the center of the Earth. And I like to use this electronics analogy because I'll be talking about this more because I think our ancestors were doing electronics on a landscape level. So here let's say this is the iron crystalline core generating the electricity, and here these banks, if they're resistors, they would be things like beds of mica within the Earth. If they're conductors, they could be beds of quartz rock. Let's imagine these, they look like water towers, underground aquifers, and the whole thing is linked by underground water courses. And so up here, this is the looking up from the center of the Earth up towards the inside of the Earth's crust. Okay, this is what I'm imagining if we drew the Earth as an electronic, using electronics as an analogy, what it would look like. And so here the electromagnetism is being generated from this in all directions. And look, we've got two currents going up here to this circle here. So let's imagine these strips, these are the ley lines connecting the sacred sites, and the sacred sites, these circles. So if these two currents of energy going up to that circle, if at that point you built this, what would be happening? Suddenly we see that instead of seeing stones, what we would see is a patterning of energy, because those stones draw up the energy. So this crop circle, I think, is a good representation of what it maybe look like if you can see energy. I don't see energy, but some people have that talent. So if Stonehenge, if we saw that energetically, maybe it would look like this. Beautiful, intricate mandala or interconnecting of energies. And us being energetic beings, which we've just proven by a little experiment at the beginning, when you walk into the center of this, as someone has done here, your energy field, your energy patterning is being influenced, it's being changed, in this case by the crop circle, but also in the case of going into Stonehenge, by the energies there themselves. A few years ago, Tom Graves wrote his book called Needles of Stone. I thought that was such a great title because the stones are like acupuncture needles. The stone circles in Britain are invariably made of, the stones are invariably made of either sarsen stone, which is the case at Avebury or Stonehenge, or granite, heavily crystalline studded granite, which is the case, for example, down in Cornwall. So these stones are acupuncture needles that are drawing up this earth energy, and also antennae that are drawing down celestial or cosmic energies radiating from the sun, but also from the heavens all around us. So that energy is in the stone, and if you create a circle of stones, you create a cauldron. I believe, you know, when Wicca talks about using the cauldron for making potions and spells, etc., it's really an analogy for creating a container. And this is what is happening here. Our ancestors were creating energetic containers which, once they stepped inside them, they were altered. And they use that energy, I can only guess, for similar purposes probably that we use churches and temples today, for rites of passage, for birth, for christenings, for death, for weddings, for all sorts of empowerment ceremonies. Because the stones have a high crystalline quartz content. Sarsen is sandstone, sand is quartz, which is silicon. So there's the analogy with the electronics, and you're seeing this because this computer it operates on silicon chips, and so crystal power powers our entire modern world, and it's all about manipulating energy. That's the point I want to make. Don't see the world as physical. Don't see a stone circle as the stones. See it as the space in between the stones where the energy is interacting and playing. See yourselves not as a physical being, but as an energy body. Here we are at the obelisk in Avebury. Maria mentioned yesterday about the bands of energy up stones, and we're dowsing. I'm dowsing for that, and these two women are dowsing for the energy field around the stone. And you might say, well, that's not a stone, that's a concrete marker. But it doesn't matter, because what is concrete? Concrete is 75% sand. So it operates in the same way as the original sarsen stones, pretty much. And I'm not going to labour this point. We all know about the St Michael ley line and the Michael and Mary Ng currents, thanks to fabulous work of dowsing of Hamish Miller and Paul Broadhurst writing up the journey. And of course, to now Gary Bilcliffe, Caroline Hoare's new book, The Spine of Albion, telling us about the route of the Belinus line with the twin Belinus and Ellen Ng currents. If you haven't got that book, by the way, already, I do recommend you go down and buy it today. It's fantastic, and it's really heavy, so don't order it on Amazon and you're going to have to pay a fortune in shipping. Get it today from Gary and Caroline. I'm particularly interested in their section on Winchester, which is so well researched and fabulous. And here we have the rainbow serpent currents, rainbow serpent paths going all the way around the world, and there are energy grids. You know, there's the Hartmann lines, the Curry lines, the Petrie lines. So there's a whole plethora of different energies around the Earth and around our body. So we're all familiar with the chakra system and the Kundalini. And I love this image because this really shows sort of what we are, who we are, energy beings. So that's the first point, that everything is energy, we are energy. My next point is if this beautiful mural of this boy and girl is in the, if you go to Crediton in Devon, to the church there, which used to be a cathedral before it was moved to Exeter, very powerful place, has a crossing of the Michael and Mary currents under the tower in the centre of the church. If you look up, there's a cross in the ceiling directly above where the Ng's cross in the choir. Anyway, next door to it is sort of a modern community centre attached to a church, and this mural's at the end, and it's fabulous. What I love about it is it shows us a lesson that the sacred sites have been teaching me for the last 20 years, the need to bring our yin-yang, masculine, feminine, positive, negative, into balance. Our society is very patriarchal, very male-dominated, has been for thousands of years, and we need to change how we individually operate. We all have an inner masculine, an inner feminine, and by that, what I mean is the masculine is the logical, the right brain, the action out in the world, jump, bum, bum, and the feminine is the left brain, sorry, the other way round, the right brain, the heart center, the gut feeling, our intuition, our direct connection to source. So when we make our decisions in the world, we tend to sit down and we think about it. Oh, right, what shall I do tomorrow? For example, say you've got a free day, what shall I do? And you think about it, but actually a much better thing would be to tune in and to receive inner guidance, possibly from yourself, from your higher self, or from spirit, wherever, and get that guidance as to what's the best thing to do. And then your inner masculine is great at saying, I know how you can do that. You catch the 47 bus from the end of the street and it'll cost you £2.73. And it's brilliant at that, but it's no good. It's actually crap at deciding what to do. It's great on telling you how to do it. So this is lovely reminder that, oh, actually, I did want to say, what's beautiful about this is, here's the girl. She's connected to the earth. So look, she has her hand facing upwards, looking up to heaven. She needs more solar, celestial energy. The boy, he's got all the sun energy, all the sort of masculine solar energy. He needs the earth energy, so he has his hand down, connecting with the earth energies. Whoever painted this, I don't know if they knew what they were doing, but it's absolutely fantastic. And here we have a 17th century lithograph showing the same thing, the male sun energy and the female lunar energy. There's a very good example of this in history, and that's in the Arthurian legend. So here is King Arthur in a boat with Merlin behind him, and the moment when the Lady of the Lake offers up Excalibur to Arthur. And we all know, I think, that she offers Excalibur to Arthur, and she says, this sword's name is Excalibur. It's extremely powerful and can cut through metal and stone. But what she said next is far more important, and most of us have either never heard it or forgotten it. What she said next was, but the true power lies not in the blade, but in the scabbard or sheath. Whosoever wears the sheath shall never die of his wounds. Guard it with your life. And we've forgotten that because we're in this patriarchal society. It hasn't paid attention. Just to make the point, I looked on the internet to get this image. I had to go to the 47th, not 47th image, the 47th page of images before I could find one showing the scabbard as well as the blade. We've relegated that to the trash can, to use an American phrase, and it's really important. So what she was saying was, the feminine principle is where the true power lies. I'm not talking about women, I'm talking about all of us, but our connection to source, that is a true source of our living well in the world and our power. Whosoever connects with that will never die of wounds. And this image, I really love this because this sums it up. And so here is the Queen knighting her trusty knight, who here you see he's got a crescent moon on his back, so he's in homage to the goddess. And she's using her right hand, which is the masculine, to do that. But look where her left hand is. Her left hand is on the scabbard. So the left side, the intuitive, the connection to feminine, is on the scabbard, and the right hand is knighting him. She is in perfect harmony. She knows how to do it. There's a bit of a diversion here, but I just wanted to put this up because we're talking about the Lady of the Lake. Here's an aerial photograph of, this is Dosmary Pool, one of the reputed homes of the Lady of the Lake. And can you see this image? If you half close your eyes, you might see it better. Here is her head. Here's her body. Like this. Here's her head, chin, neck. Here's the shoulder. Here's another shoulder. Elbow. Here's the second elbow. And then her belly. And then she's sitting here. And here's Dosmary beneath her seat of power. Her feet down here, knee. And look, in the center of her chest, a field that's heart-shaped. Like Michael said yesterday, who could plan that? Who could envision that? What's the... this brings up this question about acausality. Now, okay, that's quite enough of that. I realise if I leave that on the screen for more than a couple of seconds, people either walk out or fall asleep or get this glazed over look on their faces. So I'll tell you what that said. All I really want you to remember is the title. Irrational numbers are at the core of sacred geometry. And here I put the values of pi, the square root of 2, 3, 5, and phi. Those are all irrational numbers, which means they can't be defined. So all these numbers carry on in decimal points to infinity without ever repeating themselves. There's no definition of those numbers, and that is really, really, really crucial piece of information to know. Here's an example of pi. It's a circle. Pi, you know, I won't go into all this, but you know that. And pyramids at Teotihuacan, that's based on sacred geometry, as is the pyramid. All those irrational numbers, not all of them, but you know, there's always an irrational number at the basis of sacred structures. Sacred geometry is really based around irrational numbers. Here we've got the Vesica, and this is Calendar 2, a chamber in New England. That's square root of 5, the chamber inside. The Parthenon, this is 5, the Fibonacci series, the golden section. The length of that is 1.618 compared to the height of 1. So the golden section, and they did that because that's the proportion of beauty. Hugh actually told me that this hall we're in is based on the golden ratio. The length of it compared to the width is the golden section. So you're in a sacred building. And we can see it in nature. We see the beautiful spirals here. These are all based on the Fibonacci series or the golden section, the golden ratio, whatever you want to call it. It's because nature patterns using these irrational numbers. If the numbers weren't irrational, if all numbers could be perfectly defined, the universe wouldn't exist. I'll tell you my little analogy. Some of you may have heard this before. Why I think this is important, how this works. If you imagine a spinning top, and you spin the top, and it sort of spins on a point, and then after a little while, it sort of winds down, and it stops. That would be the end of the universe if all numbers were rational, and the center, the geometric center of something was the energetic center. The universe wouldn't exist. But imagine your spinning top and the central spindle, instead of being in the center, you move it slightly off to one side, just a little bit. We see this in crop circles. If you measure a crop circle, the point, the spiral in the center from which it all spirals out, in a genuine formation, is never the exact geometric center of that circle. It's always off to one side, maybe by a foot, in larger circles, maybe by as much as 3 feet. I always find that the energetic center in cathedrals or churches or stone circles, it's never the geometric center, it's always off to one side. And this has to be because this is the way nature manifests. So you've got your spinning top, instead of spinning at the point in the center, you put the spindle off to one side and then spin it. What happens is it creates an ellipse, but not only an ellipse, it actually, the ellipse then moves around like this and creates a mandala of ellipses, and off of each of those, fractal ellipses are thrown, and off those, more and more and more and more, and the universe expands. And so the universe is alive, because God is off to one side, because the universe is off to one side. This is really, absolutely, to me, it is the fundamental building block of the universe. This piece of knowledge, it took me 10 years to come up with that idea. I'd asked people for years why they thought this was, and no one could actually tell me. Anyway, that's my thought. I offer it for what it's worth. And why I think it's important is that if we can then apply that, for example, in our buildings, in our spaces, that, you know, we're so good at making square boxes, and we measure everything from the centre, and if we put things off to one side a little, I think we'd find that there were far more harmonious places in which to work, and everything would flow so much better. So these are just some examples of the Fibonacci series in the growth patterns of plants and in the spirals of the Nautilus shell. You've all seen all this before. And also in the macrocosm in spiral galaxies, etc. That is the golden section. The golden section determines that spiral. So nature can't help itself. It has to manifest in this way. Yeah, I don't think I can say that in any other way. So, have a ponder on that over a cup of coffee sometime. Moving on, water. Water is, again, so really, really important. Water is fantastic. Without water, we are all dead. Without water, worlds are dead. But not only that, water shouldn't exist. It's the only substance on our world that exists in both liquid, solid, and gaseous form. The only thing. That's quite amazing in itself. Nothing else naturally occurs in all three states. We can make it do so, but it doesn't naturally occur. Water does. It has, I think, 54 anomalous properties that shouldn't exist according to the laws of physics. It's the most amazing thing. And I'm afraid at the moment we treat it like a sewer. And it's so amazing. We flush the toilet with it, we wash in it, which is great, we need to do this, but we also use it to anoint, to baptize. So we use it for very holy reasons, we use it for very crass reasons. We need to drink it, we water our plants with it, we release it into our atmosphere in our houses when the atmosphere is too dry. We absolutely need it. Not only do we need it, the world needs it. When you see the circulation pattern of water around the world, it is what keeps everything alive and going. It's really, really fantastic stuff. It manifests off to one side. And it's crucial for one of the things I'm talking about, because it underlies every sacred site in the world. Now, I make that comment, and I always say, if you know of a sacred site in the world that doesn't have water beneath it, let me know. I would love to know. And in about 15 years since I've been saying this, no one has been able to tell me a sacred site which does not have water beneath it. Some would say, oh, the pyramids, that's really dry in the desert. There's water beneath the pyramids. There's water beneath every sacred site. And what's really important about it are two things. One is the water. When I talked at the beginning about the electromagnetism that's generated within the Earth, that comes to the surface via the path of least resistance. And that is one of three things, primarily. Underground beds of conductive material, like granite, with the crystal, within rock. A second way that the electromagnetism comes to the surface is through fault lines, and a third is through underground watercourses. And that's why holy wells really are healing wells, because the water that wells up is enlivened, if you like, or potentized with currents of electromagnetism, which are, as Maria pointed out yesterday, between 7 and 10 hertz. It's a frequency at which we are healthy. It's a frequency we get into when we go into meditation, into an alpha state. So the earth energy is healing for us. And that's why if you're not feeling good and you go and lay on the ground, you'll feel better. We're so disconnected because we wear rubber-soled shoes most of the time, and so we're disconnected from the earth. Water is one where we can reconnect, but there's lots of others. This is Winchester, the crypt of Winchester Cathedral. In winter, it's flooded, and there's the well directly beneath the high altar in Winchester Cathedral. If you ask the guides who take around the crypts why that well is there, you get all sorts of reasons, but none of them make any sense at all. But actually, the cathedral is there because of this water. That's why it's there. It's not why is the well beneath the cathedral, it's the cathedral is above an upwelling of water. And of course, Chalice Well here in Glastonbury that we all know about. And the work of Dr. Emoto, I don't think I need to labour this, I'm sure you all know about it. Dr. Emoto discovered that water has a memory, and one of the things he did was to write words on little slips of paper and put them on little vials of water and then freeze it and watch the crystalline pattern that formed when it slowly thawed. And this is the crystalline pattern that occurs when you write love and thanks onto water. If you write war, I'm not going to put it up, I don't put at energy here, but you get a half a crystalline pattern that's melting. It can't hold together, it has no beauty or integrity. And what's beautiful about it, and even speaking the words, you can say love and thanks to water and it holds it. I mean, this makes the power of words so important. The Bible actually says in the beginning was a word. So you're listening to me, what I say is having an impact on you. The intentions of every word we say has an impact, so we have to take responsibility for our thoughts and for our speech. We are creating our reality in the next moment. And homeopathy recognises the power of water. Homeopathy takes an original substance, a mother tincture, and dilutes it. And every time they dilute it, they succuss it, which means they shake it. And the more it's diluted, the more powerful it becomes, they say. Until eventually, apparently there are no molecules of the original material left. You only have pure water, and skeptics of homeopathy say, well, that's rubbish, it's just water. But actually, it's not, because what has actually been transferred, when you, the energetic blueprint has been transferred. When you dilute it, you take away more of the crass physical substance in the beginning, but the energy blueprint transfers, and the shaking it fixes it. That's one way to fix energy, to hit it. We make essences of sacred sites, and we shape them to fix the energy in there. So next time anyone invites you to do a toast, I'd like to tell you what's really happening. Say you're at a wedding, and somebody stands up and they make a speech, a toast for the bride and groom, and they say some beautiful words about the bride and groom. Normally, when everyone's standing around holding the drink here at their heart level, so they're hearing these lovely thoughts about the bride and groom, and it's going out through the thoughts, through the atmosphere, into this drink. Then the person doing the toast holds it up and says to the bride and groom, but holds it at head level where that thought can really potentize it. And so all the liquid in the glasses is now potentized with these loving thoughts of the bride and groom. And then everyone repeats that to affirm it, and then takes a drink, and that is imbibed and taken into your energy field. So you all share and amplify those loving thoughts. Interesting, isn't it? Because of the power of intention. The power of intention is we are not physical beings having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a physical experience. And the sooner we wake up and act as if that is the case, the sooner the world changes. We don't believe we are powerful gods or goddesses or co-creators of reality, but I believe we are. We are creating every reality, and we can blame the politicians, we can blame other people, but we are individually all jointly responsible for the reality we create. So let's recognize the power we have, and we can do something about it very easily. And our ancestors knew this. Now, here's a Druid ceremony at Stonehenge, and I believe that, you know, their intentions, whatever they are, the ceremony they're doing, is as just pretty much, it will be as efficacious and effective as this ceremony at Stonehenge. They're both, it doesn't matter what form it takes, it's the intentions that count. Or sitting around a fire in a wood and doing your own ceremony, or sitting with friends around the table having a meal and a drink and talking, or being on your own. Whatever it is you're doing, you are creating the next moment. So, I want to talk a little bit about practical ways of applying this today. I've mentioned some of the ways in terms of our attitudes. There are also physical ways in which we can utilize the knowledge of our ancestors. So this is an image of today's agribusiness, because that's what agriculture is today. It's a multinational, huge business. And I like this quote from this young man. Patrick Macmillan was doing an MA thesis on genetic modification. So I don't know if he worked for Monsanto or, but he had woken up to the reality, because what he said was, we need to start making changes in the way that we live rather than changing the world to make it easier for us to live in the way that we do. We need to take more responsibility. And I really like that as a quote. Don't want to give much energy to Monsanto. What I would say is I would urge all of you to sign petitions to trying to prevent the spread of genetically modified seeds. They're really being created and being pushed to make profits for huge multinational companies, not to feed the world. Evidence shows that it's not doing that. So, and there are other ways of getting increased yields, and this is one of them. Now again, I loved your talk yesterday, Maria, because you touched on lots of things that I'm talking about, which is great, how these themes go through a weekend. Maria talked about the places within sacred sites which have high positive ions. And if you read this book by John Burke, Seed of Knowledge, Stone of Plenty, John Burke was part of BLT research that was analysing samples from crop circles, and they basically found that seeds from within a laid crop circle, if the crop circle had occurred in mature crop, so it was ripe, it was ready for harvest pretty much, then those seeds became potentized compared to control samples, which were from the rest of the field where the pattern hadn't laid down. So here's a photograph showing these are the seeds from within the crop circle, and these are ones from outside. This is after 11 days. So the germination rate is increased and they're growing more vigorously. And I found when it came to maturity, the yield was up to 40% increased. And how did that happen? Simply by being in a crop circle. And what John Burke discovered was that he travelled around various sacred sites in the world. With his scientific equipment, he had a machine that could detect magnetism and radiation and also atmospheric ions. And he discovered that at various places, one of them is by by the obelisk stone in the southern circle at Avebury. There are three, they're called pits. They're little concrete flat markers on the ground. Maybe you've never even noticed them. But there are three little concrete slabs just behind the obelisk stone there. And archaeologists don't know what they were for. And what John did was he laid out his seeds there because he detected with his equipment that there was a natural spike of atmospheric ions just before dawn, around the time of the dawn chorus, each day. And if he laid the seeds out for about 20 minutes, and then he had control ones that he never took into the circle, and then grew them on, he got the same results as if they'd been in a crop circle. Now, this is really important stuff. You know, we're being sold. The world is being manipulated by genetic modification for profit when we don't need it, when you can just do things like this. Find the places where there's a natural spike in atmospheric ions and lay your seeds out. Maybe this is one reason why Avebury was built. People travelled along the ridgeway for miles and brought their seeds to potentize them. It may be not, but it works anyway. He also went, here's the pits, the obelisk, and look, there's one there and there. You'll see them if you go and look just by the back of the chapel. He found the same results on top of Silbury Hill. He found the same at Giza on top of Great Pyramid, Machu Picchu, Cahokia Mounds in the United States. So we need to know this. So that's one little example. Another example are the Irish Round Towers. Look at the work of Professor Philip Callaghan about the Irish Round Towers. And what his theory is that these are paramagnetic aerials, or aerials reach up to the sky and conduct paramagnetic radiation from the sun into the surrounding lands. The conventional theory is that they were built at monastic communities, and they were either bell towers or they were used for the monks to hide in during the Viking raids of the 10th century. And both theories don't hold water. They've never found any structure at the top to hold bells, and the doors of these normally about 9 feet off the ground, so they had to have a ladder, and the theory is they climbed up, they pulled the ladder up, and then they couldn't be got to. All you got to do, I mean, there was no food or water in these. The Vikings would just sit there and starve them out after a few days, or fire a burning arrow at the wooden door, and it'd become a smokestack, and they'd be dead within a short space of time. But what Callaghan suggested is that these are paramagnetic conductors. They were never attached to the church. They were surrounded by the garden. They were freestanding structures. And this potentizes the land and makes it better for crops to grow. So much so, here's an example of how it works. So the radiations come from the sun. The the stone tower acts as an antenna, drawing it down and radiating it out through the land. Trees act in a different way. Tors, like the Glastonbury Tor, or the hilltop without any image on the top, any building on the top, acts in the same way, drawing down the paramagnetic energy and radiating it out to the land. And that's what is necessary for growing crops in a good way. So much so that farmers, and these farmers are in Australia, they have made an imitation Irish Round Tower with a plastic piece of tubing, drain pipe or sewer pipe, and they filled it with paramagnetic rock, like basalt, and they find one of those in the middle of a field increases the yield, reduces pest damage, increases fertility, and there's need for less application of any fertilizers, either natural or chemical. And more so, I was talking with Patrick McManaway recently, the former head of British Society of Dowsers, and Patrick has been doing this work with some of these farmers, and he says, and it's even better if they write a list of what their intentions are for that crop. I want no pest damage, I want good drought resistance, I want good yield, etc. And you pop that in. He said it's like writing a note to Santa Claus, and it works. Any farmer in the world can apply this for free. This is really important stuff we need to know. We can change the world for nothing very easily with a little application of knowledge. And I knew I was going to forget why I put this up. Let's have a look. Oh yes, pyramidal structures. So the knowledge from pyramidal structures, like here at Teotihuacan, and I won't go into this, but an amazing place. The so-called Way of the Dead, or Avenue of the Dead, almost certainly wasn't a walkway, but was flooded with water. So but we won't go back onto that. So here, Charles Hubbard in Nova Scotia, he tries all sorts of experiments with different techniques, and one thing is pyramidal greenhouses. He says the growth within the greenhouse is increased, but more so, the growth at the corners goes absolutely crazy. The crops at the corners grow almost like wildly out of control compared to put them in a conventional greenhouse. Another thing he does, by the way, Charles Hubbard, is he builds a compost heap, but instead of spreading the compost on the garden, he builds it on an energy line. So the energy line runs through the compost heap and to his vegetable plot, and then he uses his intention to send all the nutrients from the compost heap to the garden. He never spreads a compost, and he gets great results. The power of intention. So I'm just finishing now. And this work of Yannick van Doorn in Holland, he just makes these very simple, the magnets in here, and a little antennae, and he covers them in beeswax, and that's it. And he says, in a field he will put, say, 4 of these, and they have fantastic results. Here you can see the results. This is the field with these little magnets in, and this is the field without them. They're utilising energy. That's the whole point. They're seeing the world as energy, not as physical objects. When we see the world as energy, we can change it really positively, really well. We can see what other people are doing. We say, oh, that's not right. You're really creating chaos there with that structure. You look at things in the terms of energy, and suddenly it all becomes pretty clear what we should do. And if we mimic nature, we win every time. When we fight nature, we lose every time. I think that's the bottom line. Nature knows, and all we have to do is look at how nature works. I'll read this to you in case you can't read it at the back. It says, the application of magnetism, the cosmic and telluric energies, charged water and sound can stimulate the growth of plants to a great extent. This little known technology can accelerate growth rates, increase yields, and improve crop quality. It can protect plants from diseases, insects, and frost. These methods can also reduce the requirements for fertilizer or pesticides. Farmers can grow bigger and better crops in less time, with less effort, and at a lower cost. So we have the choice: are we going to continue on our agri-business monoculture method, or are we, like the sunflowers, going to turn and face the sun and create a bright tomorrow? Thank you very much.